Kuma is about to die. And not just Kuma. In the final saga, Oda has been much more comfortable killing off characters in general, and in fact, entire islands. The final saga is shaping up to be the most dramatic and high-stakes One Piece has ever been. And if Egghead Island is just the start, then things are only going to get more drastic from here on. Right now, there are actually several characters who are extremely likely to die by the end of One Piece. I'm talking about Shanks, Usopp, Law, and even Aokiji. But before you start typing saying there's no way these characters will die, just remember, there's a common pattern in One Piece for characters that end up being killed off. That Ace, Whitebeard, Pedro, Ashura Doji, and Cobra all follow. If a character has been written to reach a point of closure in their life, and is openly comfortable with dying, having fulfilled their core desire, then Oda is much more likely to kill them off. Ace only ever wanted to know that he was loved. Whitebeard was happy to have a family and be known as a good father. Pedro specifically wanted to give the last years of his lifespan to help bring the dawn of the world. Ashura Doji specifically wanted to die an honorable death, making a difference in battle. And Cobra only ever wanted to unveil the truth about the past before he died. Meaning that for characters who end up being killed off, Oda literally writes their story arcs specifically around them being okay with or even embracing death. As Kaido said, death is what completes a man. So let's look again at the characters who would be, in a sense, completed by death. But first I want to say, now that it's a new year, why not get a fresh start to the year by eating healthier with zero effort using Factor, the sponsor for this video. Look, I know eating healthy is difficult. It's hard to plan healthy meals because it takes time, and it's hard to stick to a diet because the food usually tastes bad. But Factor literally makes it so easy. Factor does the planning for you, since its meals are specifically made to be nutritious by professional dietitians, and the food is delicious because it's made by professional chefs to be restaurant quality. They are ready-made meals that are sent straight to your door, and you'd be shocked at some of the great food that you get that's also really healthy, like chicken parmesan or shredded pork. There are over 35 meals to choose from each week, or you can go along with meal plans like keto, calorie smart, protein plus, vegan or veggie, and more. I normally customize my picks for the week, but I'm actually about to switch over to Factor's keto plan to try that out to start the year, because I've been wanting to test out a keto diet for myself, and it's a huge pain in the ass to actually meal plan a keto diet on your own, so I'm just gonna have Factor do it for me. So try something different to start the year. Try out Factor. You can actually get 50% off your first Factor box using my code, so you have no excuse not to try eating healthier. Just head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code MORGE50 to get 50% off your first Factor box. Link in the description below. So first, let's get this out of the way. It's very likely Kuma is going to die, nothing much to talk about here, as he is a character whose entire concept is built around self-sacrifice. It feels almost necessary for Kuma to give his life to save others as well. The entirety of Egghead Island has shown us Kuma slowly breaking down further and further, and these final moments for him are only truly meaningful if they are in fact his final moments. Barring some miraculous twist wherein Kuma's consciousness can in fact be restored, and he can be returned to normal and live a happy life with his daughter, thereby undoing literally all of the dramatic weight of the finale of Kuma's backstory, I think it's safe to assume that Kuma's death is around the corner. Now moving past Kuma, the first interesting character on the chopping block is Shanks. Of all the characters in this video, even if you believe it would be too dark for Oda to kill all of them, or even most of them, there is one character who is far and away the safest bet to die in the final saga, and that is Shanks. That's because Shanks is essentially written by Oda to be a very safe choice for him to kill to give the story a bit of a dramatic push. What do I mean by that? Well, to begin with, Shanks checks off two very important boxes. He is very important to Luffy, but at the same time, he isn't that prominent of a character in the story itself. Shanks doesn't really appear in One Piece all that often. He is a side character. He essentially fills the exact same niche that Ace did in Marineford, where Ace was a fan favorite, Ace was very important to Luffy, but Ace was not really a main character. Meaning that killing Ace off would be sad for the reader, be sad for Luffy, but simultaneously would not really change our reading experience or the tone for the story long term. The impact of Shanks' death would be very similar. If Ace was Luffy's brother figure, then Shanks is Luffy's father figure. And this raises another important point, which is that it is by and large extremely common and practically expected throughout fiction and fantasy that the father or mentor figure ultimately dies to create drama, and to help the growth of the protagonist, as now the full burden of facing the final conflict of the story falls solely upon them. It is essentially the passing of the torch moment, the coming of age moment, whatever you would like to call it, but it's the same reason that Jiraiya and Dumbledore and Obi-Wan and all these types of characters die. Shanks dying isn't just likely, it's inherently good for Luffy's story and Luffy's growth as a character. On top of this, Shanks is specifically written by Oda to be practically perfect for death, much like the other characters Oda has killed off in the past. Shanks has seemingly no personal ambitions of his own aside from helping the hero reach his full potential to bring the dawn, and Shanks is content simply playing the role of maintaining the world's balance till that time comes. It really doesn't seem as though Shanks wants anything more than to see Luffy achieve what he is meant to achieve. Shanks is also very clearly okay with being a sacrifice in the path of seeing Luffy bring about the new age. And finally, of course, there is the Shanks and Blackbeard setup. A seemingly inevitable duel that Shanks of course won't win, because the whole point of this classic setup, seen throughout all fiction, is for the mentor figure to be defeated by the villain, therefore setting up the villain as the ultimate challenge for the hero to overcome. So with Shanks, I'd be more surprised if he actually lived to see the final chapter. Now beyond Shanks, we have the controversial picks, Usopp and Law. Now here's the situation. There is good reason to believe that at least one of these two characters will die, but not necessarily both. One death might in fact be dependent on the other. Now you might be saying, Morge, what the hell are you talking about? Why would either of these characters die? Well, let's start with Usopp individually. I explained this topic in greater detail in this video, but in short, everything goes back to 2 points. First, the foreshadowing that seems to have been planted in Little Garden, and second, the nature of Usopp's dream. In Little Garden, Usopp very clearly spells out that not only is he okay with death, Usopp very literally wants to die proudly in a manner that he feels is befitting of a brave warrior of the sea. Again, this is very literally what the character wants, this is what he dreams of. That makes Usopp, by Oda's standards, the perfect type of character to kill off. A character that genuinely wants to die because they would be happiest going out in a certain specific way. See Pedro, see Ashura Doji. As we know, Oda is a sentimental writer, he has tremendous difficulty killing off characters, so it seems the only way he is actually comfortable doing it is when he can make death actually a happy ending for said characters. It is extremely scary for Usopp that he is written with his self-proclaimed happiest ending imaginable being his own proud final stand. Now the second major factor supporting Usopp's death is that Usopp's broader dream that has been established is very different from the rest of the Straw Hats. Usopp's dream is the only one without a concrete end. It's not drawing a map of the world, it's not becoming the world's strongest swordsman, it's not finding the All Blue, it's not reuniting with a friend. Every other Straw Hat dream has some sort of point of achievement, where objectively you can see that it has been accomplished. But with Usopp, it's simply becoming a brave warrior of the sea. That is entirely subjective, and the problem with that is by most standards, Usopp is already a brave warrior of the sea. Usopp was arguably a brave warrior when he helped free East Blue. He was arguably a brave warrior when he challenged the world government. I think by the time of Dressrosa, no one could argue against the notion that Usopp is a brave warrior of the sea. But still, Usopp doesn't call himself a brave warrior of the sea yet, which means that something for him personally is missing. This suggests that he needs to do something more than what he has already done on so many islands, something that would make him truly feel that he has now become a brave warrior of the sea. And the only benchmark we got of that was Usopp talking about a proud death. This strongly suggests to me that the most fitting end for Usopp's story would be the one that he told us from the start, being able to die in some major act of bravery, wherein he could finally, proudly proclaim that he is a brave warrior of the sea. The Wano arc also adds more weight to this, in that Usopp spends the entire arc talking up how much he avoids death. when we know for a fact that this is in stark contrast to what he truly desires, to one day be able to embrace death as a brave warrior, suggesting that Wano was a setup for a very important character moment of growth of Usopp actually facing death head-on as a brave warrior. So all in all, it's almost like Usopp was the one Straw Hat literally written to die from the beginning, the one with the most different dream from the rest, and the one who specifically desires a proud death as his version of a happy ending to his story. But here's of course the big problem, which is Oda's own hesitance as a writer to make the tough decisions. It seems Oda can't help himself but simply save some characters who are clearly better off dead. And one of the most telling statements Oda has made is that he doesn't like killing characters because it would ruin the mood for the big party at the end. And you know what, ultimately I can appreciate that to some degree, since One Piece is at its core a feel-good story, where we are all reading for the sense of victory and joy of everyone celebrating together at the end. While Usopp's death may be a happy ending for his character, it would be utterly tragic for the rest of the crew. However, on the other hand, the situation is not so black and white. There's clearly a middle ground. Oda killed off Pedro and some of the scabbards, and everyone in Wano still had a good time at the feast. And remember, in Alabasta, Vivi literally thought Pell was dead, but that didn't stop her from celebrating without a care in the world the very next day. And Vivi was honestly probably closer to Pell than any of the Straw Hats are even to each other. So ultimately, the long-lasting effect of a character's death on the mood is entirely up to Oda, meaning that with Usopp's potential death, well, it would really depend on the timing. If it's during the final battle itself, the sense of loss would probably be too fresh for any sort of celebration after the battle. But if Usopp died sometime before the final battle, wherein there is more breathing room and time for the Straw Hats to mourn and dig themselves out of their low point and rise back up to fight and win the final battle for the world, then celebrating with a big feast still would make sense in my opinion. However, there is one complication to Usopp's death to consider, and that is the growing role of another character, Trafalgar Law. So I already explained the in-story reasons that Usopp might die, but the out-of-story reasons are that the death of a main character like Usopp is the most powerful way to add significant drama to the climax of the story. However, what if it doesn't have to be Usopp? What if Oda initially planned for Usopp to play this role, but then realized that he could go with another, easier option? See, Trafalgar Law was supposedly never planned on being this important, but over time he has undoubtedly turned into a main character of One Piece, with a more prominent role and greater screen time than even some of the Straw Hats. So is it possible that as Law's character role developed, at some point Oda realized that he could kill off Law in the final saga, and thereby have a main character die without having to pull the trigger on actually killing one of the Straw Hats? After all, Law is a main character now. He is the only character in One Piece who you could say is a main character who is not a member of the Straw Hat crew. And that is a very dangerous position to be in, because Law is a main character, but he is not that close to Luffy, which means that Law's death could be dramatic and it could mean a lot to the reader, but simultaneously not mean so much to the Straw Hats that it ruins their end-of-story feast, like Oda worries about. I mean, just looking at Law, he's perfect for death. He has a Chekhov's gun ability that primes him to die, it's an immortality surgery that kills the user, which perfectly sets Law up for going out in some sort of noble sacrifice. Law himself is also completely okay with death. Law didn't even plan on surviving past Doflamingo. Law was all in on killing himself just to take out Doflamingo. That was his actual plan. The simple fact that Law came out of Dressrosa having gotten what he wanted without even sacrificing himself like he planned basically means that he's living on house money at this point. Law didn't even intend on getting this far. Law doesn't care about the One Piece, he kind of cares about the Will of D, but for the most part, Law's actual story is done. It was done the moment Doflamingo went down. It's not like Law's living with some powerful childhood dream that he needs to live on to fulfill like the Straw Hats or anything. So all in all, Law's immortality surgery is a death flag, the completion of his story arc and his acceptance of death make him perfectly killable, and he is at the moment far and away the most significant protagonist that Oda could kill in One Piece who is not a Straw Hat. So bottom line, I do think a main character death is in the works. The only question is if it's going to be Law or Usopp, or if Oda's feeling insanely, uncharacteristically bold, then both. And if you're enjoying this video so far, make sure to subscribe for more videos like this every week. And make sure to get your One Piece inspired clothing today in the merch store. We have hoodies, sweatshirts, and t-shirts. And get your one-of-a-kind puzzle of all major One Piece characters. Link in the description below. And finally, maybe the most dark horse death pick of them all, Aokiji. Alright, so this one likely sounds strange, but I have been thinking on Aokiji's story for a while now, and it feels as though it may be heading for a tragic end. To begin with, Aokiji is one of the most morally messy characters in One Piece. We have seen the good side of him lately with his approach to Robin and trying to stop Akainu, but at the same time, nothing will ever erase the blood of genocide that Aokiji has on his hands. Aokiji is almost as responsible for the death of the civilians of Ohara as Akainu is. That is never going away. Just because Aokiji regrets it now doesn't change the fact that he helped execute the extermination of an entire civilization. The story of Aokiji since Ohara has been of a man who has done terrible things, trying to make amends by walking a new path. And Aokiji seems to believe that he has found that better path. Despite seemingly joining the Blackbeard Pirates, everything about Aokiji's writing implies that there is a deeper, more noble goal that Aokiji is pursuing, that simply happens to be easiest by working alongside the Blackbeard Pirates. But the thing is, I don't think that Aokiji is necessarily going to get a happy ending. A lot of the ideas of Hachinosu seem to suggest that there are problems with the paths that both Garp and Aokiji walk, which is why Kobe's way is the true future of the Marines. I can't imagine Aokiji at this point, having lived the life of a criminal, going on to ever again be a part of the future reformed Marines. I don't believe he will ever be accepted back as Admiral or Fleet Admiral. So then what is the ending of Aokiji's story? I don't know if there's a place for Aokiji at the end of all this. The path that he has walked is too morally gray, the sins he has committed require too much redemption, and the choices he has made post-time skip are likely to have consequences. To begin with, I don't believe Aokiji will be able to freely play the Blackbeard Pirates and get away with it. Remember, Aokiji's not truly a member of the crew, he's kind of using them. But at the same time, many of them already mistrust him, and Blackbeard is too devious of a character to be working so closely with. Remember, Blackbeard's whole MO is simply using people till it's time to stab them in the back. Aokiji is not going to get the better of Blackbeard. We know that no matter what happens, the Blackbeard Pirates are going to continue their unstoppable rise and their successes till they are defeated by Luffy and the Straw Hats. No one else. Whatever Aokiji's plan is, I don't think he's going to survive till the Blackbeard Pirates' endgame. At the same time, I do believe that Aokiji will be able to achieve something of note, otherwise his whole current character arc is pointless. He is a character who, more than any other, needs redemption, and is actively searching for it. As such, I do believe that Aokiji will make a difference and that he's walking this path for a reason, but I think the impact that he makes will have to come with some sacrifice. Therefore, I think giving his life to make the world a better place would be the redeeming act that could in some way right the great wrongs that he has done in the past. But at the same time, with the situation he's put himself in, the sins that he already carries, and the heaviness of the burden he has chosen to take upon himself, I don't imagine Aokiji will ever get to ride off into the sunset. So let me know who you think is most likely to die in the comments below, as well as anyone you think may die who I didn't end up listing. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe, and if you want to hear my argument for one final, most polarizing major character death that I believe will happen in the final saga, then you can listen to my weekly podcast by supporting me on Patreon, link in the description below.